We're now joined by Taylor McHargue, ESPN, CBS College Football Magazine. Taylor, ESPN, and also CBS College Football Analyst. Taylor, your thoughts? Let's talk Texas and Ohio State. Ohio State is on a heater. Texas has found a way to win in the game against Arizona State that was very dicey. Your thoughts about these two?
The Texas game, they're a possession away from really putting that game away late in the third quarter. And for Texas, it felt like, in the expanded playoffs, I think it's a learning exercise for all of these teams. But similar to the FCS or Division II, even at the NFL level, if you go down any championship team, there's typically one game that a team doesn't play their best that still finds a way to win. And if you're Texas and you're a Texas fan, you're telling yourself, well, hopefully that was the game against Arizona State. And if they win all four and they win the whole thing, that was their weakest performance in the playoffs, because that collapsed down the stretch. And Texas' inability to run the football, that was what was most concerning to me. If they can't figure out how to, on a down-to-down basis, have some success running between the tackles, which they could not do against Arizona State, didn't see any of Arch Manning and his ability to run the football either. That's exactly what Ohio State did to take away Oregon's ability to run the football, and it made Oregon have to play from behind and throw the football really the entire game, but especially the second half. So for Ohio State, I think exactly what you just saw them do against Oregon, that's going to be the recipe against Texas. And for Texas, they have got to figure out a way early down. The success rate running the football has got to improve.
Taylor, I think the thing that's impressed me most about Ohio State during this playoff run here is they entered into these last few weeks, and Michigan exploited it, where they haven't had their starters in the offensive, or all their starters in the offensive line. Donovan Jackson's moved all over the place to help them out. Their centers got, all these things happened to them this year, but against a team with a really great defensive line in Tennessee and one with a really good one in Oregon, they dominated both those times. Is that, the glory of being Ohio State, and once you get some guys some reps, they're going to be the 4 and 5 stars that they are, or is it more just gumption?
I think right now it's more of the edge that they're playing with, because the two teams that they beat on their way to the semifinals, Tennessee and Oregon, it's not like they didn't have 4 and 5 stars on the other side. But in both of those games, Ohio State jumped all over both of those opponents, Tennessee and Oregon. It was like a bomb had gone off in the first quarter, and both of those teams are down multiple scores, and it's like, what happened to us? And that's, I think, a testament to how Ryan Day has his team playing right now. The sense of urgency that they have right now. I think that's what, if you watch Texas, that to me is what was missing against Arizona State, was even though they had built a bit of a lead, there wasn't this sense of urgency. Okay, let's put this team away and end this game. I think Notre Dame and Georgia was a different matchup, but even Notre Dame had some of that as well, the ability to really put the throttle down when they needed to. And that's what Ohio State, in my opinion, through the first 2 rounds, has shown better than anybody in everybody that's been in the playoffs this year, is their ability to come out and start fast, play with an incredible energy and physicality. And a lot of that, I think, is their answer and response to how they lost against Michigan. They have answered the bell and have come back, and they're playing with, like I said, a sense of urgency. They're violent. And that's what, when you get down the stretch, that's championship football.
Taylor, I know it's been a few days, but just kind of revisiting, since we're talking about Texas, that Arizona State showing. Sam Leavitt's announced he's coming back, which at first kind of made me scratch my head. Then I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess there's always the fear that somebody could swoop in and offer him, a bunch of money to transfer or whatever. But he's coming back. Basically everybody. Jordan Tyson's announced he's coming back. Just your thoughts on that showing by Arizona State. I know a large part of that was Cam Scatterbo, who will not be back, but just sort of the identity, the attitude, and just the showing by Kenny Dillingham's program this season and in that game in particular. Your thoughts on what you saw from the Sun Devils?
Yeah, I think in this, and it's been this way for a long time, but especially in modern college football, there are so many examples of teams that move on from coaches, and we say, man, that was such a quick trigger. They moved on so quickly from that guy. But Kenny Dillingham is the reason why programs move on, because they're trying to get someone like a Kenny Dillingham. He gets it. He understands the portal. He understands NIL. And when you find that guy, that's where a program leans in. They pay the staff more. They pay the head guy more. And then the alumni lean in. And in this day and age with NIL, that's really, you need that almost as much as you need a competent coaching staff. Because if you can go out and raise money for your roster and retain guys, like you just said, it's not just getting guys in and acquiring talent. It's re-recruiting your own roster and keeping them. And so for Arizona State, I think they're one of the best examples in college football right now of the non-traditional powers, your non-blue bloods, so to speak, that are doing it the right way. They seem like what they're building, I would be surprised if it's a flash in the pan. Are they going to get back to the exact same level next year? No, maybe not. But do I think they're going to be right there in the hunt again to potentially win the Big 12? Maybe they're have a seat at the table to get an at-large bid as well. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's because of the blueprint that Kenny Dillingham has laid out, and because, like you mentioned, they've got most of these pieces coming back because the boosters and NIL collective have leaned in and they're getting these guys paid.
Taylor, why do you think that Howard is playing better? And he obviously is playing better. They're winning, but why? What has he done, or what do you see from him that makes it look like he actually is maybe up the ante a little bit?
Well, offensive line play for Ohio State has been fantastic the first two games. He's had a clean pocket. He's been upright most of the time. And if you go back against Michigan, where I think he probably played his worst game of the season, in large part that was due to, I think he was uncomfortable the entire game. I think Michigan, whether they were bringing pressure or just rushing forward, it looked like he was antsy, missed some throws he should have made. And if you're Texas, that's one of the best fronts in the country. That has to be the challenge if you're the University of Texas, is they've got some incredible weapons on the outside. And you've got to know you're going to give up a couple 50-50 balls. You're going to give up a deep shot here or there. That you have got to be able to get after Will Howard and influence his throws and not sit back, just rush forward. Maybe you add that fifth defender, but allow them to get ahead of the sticks. And also, I think Will Howard's ability to run the football, I think that's going to be a huge factor in this game against Texas, because again, that front for Texas, look at how much of the production for Scadaboo in the second half was on either plays out of the backfield. He threw for a touchdown as well. It wasn't just lining up and running downhill at Texas. Most teams that have done that this year, really all of the teams that have done that this year, didn't have much success. So I think Will Howard's ability to run the football, I think that's going to be incredibly important this week.
Taylor, what is your personal over-under of Penn State and Notre Dame?
Personal over-under, I will go 38.5.
Yeah, that's not big.
Not big, but Notre Dame, what are they? They're number 2 scoring defense in the country.
Mm-hmm.
I think if Drew Aller can deliver the ball downfield as accurately as he did against Boise State, and make no mistake about it, Notre Dame is a much more talented defense than Boise State. But the throws that Drew Aller made against Boise State were elite NFL-style throws. The back of the corner touchdown at tight end, that's as good as it gets. If he can do that consistently against Notre Dame, that's going to be the difference maker. But Notre Dame, we just talked about Ohio State playing with a sense of urgency. Notre Dame's defense is right there with Ohio State, where they are playing with an edge. They have total belief in what they're doing. And that, to me, I had them in my challenger bracket. I think Notre Dame is going to win it all. That's who I have, because what Michigan did against Ohio State, I think out of all the teams that are left and the teams that would play Ohio State, I think Notre Dame can emulate that. With what they have up front, their ability to get after the quarterback and make Will Howard uncomfortable if they ended up in a matchup in the national championship, I would favor Notre Dame. I know Ohio State is the sexy pick right now because of how they've looked in the first 2 rounds, but I think quietly, maybe more under the radar than Ohio State, I think Notre Dame's defense, that may be the best unit of these 4 teams that are remaining.
Taylor McHargue, college football analyst, ESPN and CBS. There does appear as if they're going to let not only this first year run its course before they start making changes. It's one thing to talk about it, but it appears as if things will stay the way they are next year. All right, do you want to see a couple of years of this? I do, because I don't know what we're going to get next year. Your thoughts about the first-round buys, home games in the second round. If you had if you waved the wand with one change, what would it be?
I don't know that there's anything what you just said about let's give it a little bit of time. I agree with, because if we could have changed everything after just the first game, there are a lot of people that would have redone the order and had some revisionist history and gotten Indiana out of there and had an Alabama or a South Carolina in. Well, then you fast forward to the end of the first couple rounds and through the end of the bowl season, and South Carolina loses to Illinois. Alabama loses to Michigan. And Indiana's loss to Notre Dame actually holds up pretty well. Tennessee against Ohio State was one of the biggest blowouts that we've had so far in the playoffs. I also think the top 4 seeds, the conference champions, all getting bounced in the quarterfinals, I think that's going to prove to be an outlier. I don't think that's going to be the norm. I think in the future you're going to have an SEC champion, and certainly if their quarterback is healthy, that makes it to a semifinal or a national championship. Same with the Big Ten. And same with the ACC. I think this is one of the worst years that the ACC has had in a long time when you look at their representative for the college football playoff in Clemson, but then also how they looked in the bowl schedule. I don't think we're going to look back at this year and say, yeah, how we have it structured with the 4-team, where the 4 conference champions with the buys, that we need to overhaul that. I think this year is going to prove to be an outlier in that way. And I'd like to see more of a body of work before we start overhauling this. Otherwise, we just do this every year, and it's the only sport I know we've talked a lot about this. It's the only sport that it feels like we do this, right? Where we have this gut reaction anytime an underdog, rises up and it feels like they're about to have a moment. We want to swat them back down and insert one of the blue bloods. And I think there's a lot of college football fans that are tired of that.
Taylor, thank you very much. Anything else, Paul? Craig?
Nope.
Taylor McHargue, ESPN, CBS college football analyst, former Rice quarterback, has been with us throughout the year on Wednesdays. We appreciate his time.